Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to Newsroom. I'm your host, Khalid. But today is the 27th of January 2022. These are the stories that we'll be talking about during the course of the show. We'll begin, ladies and gentlemen, by the latest situation in Afghanistan. The United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres has told the United Nations Security Council on Wednesday that Afghanistan is hanging by a thread. He has called for the countries to, of course, help Afghanistan in this hour of need. We have already talked in detail on various occasions about the humanitarian and economic crisis that Afghanistan is currently engulfed in. Now, at the same time also, the West has linked humanitarian aid for Afghanistan to the basic rights that they have been pestering Afghanistan on, whether it be the rights for the girl child or the women. The talks that were held in Oslo for the moment have been inconclusive. Also, Mr. Asad Majid Khan, who's the Pakistani ambassador to the United States of America, has said that the withdrawal of NATO troops from Afghanistan has given new opportunities for Pakistan and the United States to build a more broad-based relationship. This is going to be our first story. Our second story, ladies and gentlemen, concerns Omicron, pandemic, COVID-19, and the latest as far as that is concerned. When it comes to Pakistan, Pakistan has reported more than 7,000 new cases again in the last 24 hours. The positivity ratio across Pakistan stands at 11.9%. Moderna also at the same time, we know about the vaccines, will be updating you about what is the latest news about the vaccinations process and the new vaccines that are being developed. Then we'll be talking about India, where an angry mob has set fire to empty train coaches and has blocked rail traffic in protest over the alleged flaws in the railway recruitment. This has happened also in Bihar and in other states, and you can see the images in our parallel window. And finally, ladies and gentlemen, we'll be talking about the government of Pakistan that has formed a high-powered committee to approve the 5G spectrum strategic plan to oversee the process of releasing the next generation technology and spectrum auction. How interested are the private parties as far as the 5G auction is concerned? And what is going to be the future of 5G in Pakistan? This is going to be our last story. Let's begin with our first segment, ladies and gentlemen, and that concerns Afghanistan, economic and humanitarian aid, and the latest statements that have emanated from the West in Oslo, as well as by Mr. Antonio Guterres in the United Nations. More in the following report.
Afghanistan stands at the brink of the worst man-made humanitarian disaster, as crushing poverty has exasperated the plight of the Afghans. As the country's economic crisis deepens, dramatic rises in inflation have resulted in soaring food prices. A combination of devastating factors such as drought, COVID-19, and economic sanctions are fueling Afghanistan's deteriorating humanitarian situation, forcing the Afghans to make desperate choices, raising further alarm. The United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres told the Security Council that Afghanistan is hanging by a thread, while urging all the countries to authorize all transactions needed to carry out humanitarian activities. According to the United Nations Refugee Agency, the UNHCR, more than half of the country's estimated 40 million population faces extreme levels of hunger, and 9 million of them are at risk of famine. Crippling economic sanctions have proved to be no less lethal than the military intervention, and without immediate lifting of the asset freeze and unilateral sanctions against Afghanistan, the crisis will continue to toll upon the innocent masses. Earlier, the United Nations Humanitarian Affairs Coordinator Martin Griffiths appealed to not shut doors on Afghans. A full injection of liquidity by unfreezing Afghan assets is crucial for the restoration and development of the domestic market and the foreign trade to complete and complement the efforts of the World Bank and other international institutions. International community continues to link humanitarian aid to human rights demands, while the country is persistently descending into unprecedented misery.
To discuss this latest situation emanating as far as Afghanistan is concerned and what could be the possible future and the outcome of the current humanitarian crisis, we've been joined by Dr. Shabana Fayaz. She's a foreign affairs expert. Dr. Saiba, thank you very much to have joined us and to have come to the studio to have talked to us. Dr. Saiba, Afghanistan poses a huge humanitarian and economic crisis. We know that. We've been talking about it. You've talked about it as well in the past. But there seems to be no leeway, no kind of a bright light at the end of the tunnel as far as the humanitarian or economic aid is concerned. What are the basic reasons behind that?
You know, the basic reasons I think in case of Afghanistan has been that the sustainable basis of an economy is missing there. What happened in the last 20 years with the US controlled state in Kabul, the economy that was created was superficial. It has not penetrated. So the normal stake of an Afghani citizen is not much viable. And secondly, adding to that is that the reserves of Afghanistan have been frozen after the withdrawal of the US by the US that also negotiated a deal with Taliban through Doha talks. So this is a very complex situation.
But Dr. Saba, let's come very quickly to that aid that has been frozen by the United States. The United States froze that aid and it left Afghanistan after having talked to the Taliban. Then why is it not unfreezing the aid? Because it left after these talks, didn't it? And it froze the talks after, froze this money once it left Afghanistan. So where is the issue in between? What are the reasons in your point of view, apart from the different human rights issues that the West has? Are there some other issues that the West has?
It's a war of wits. Actually, because the Taliban and the dialogue process and other countries as well always wanted to have an inclusive government in Kabul. And what we are seeing with Taliban is, the present regime is that there is an induction from other ethnicities as well, but this doesn't satisfy the whole landscape that is supposed to be there. So this is a one point that really budges the other countries. And the second point obviously is the inflated points of the human rights. It is very difficult to say where human rights ends and where the poverty and the right to feed or right to have food exist. So if you want a human rights without a food, this is the basic dilemma for the Afghanis, or you want a respectable living of the citizens with the food. So this is what is a major dilemma, not only for the Afghanis, for the neighboring country like Pakistan, Iran, Central Asia and other countries.
But Dr. Sabar, isn't it the common man who bears the brunt of all this battle of wit, as you've just said?
Of course, it is always the common citizen, you know, who has to bear the cost of the faulty decisions of either the internals or the externals or whatever. The fact is that unfortunately in case of Afghanistan, the civil society is active, but somehow it has not penetrated to the roots of the society. So there is a big disconnect between the normal citizen Afghan and a civil society, a well-educated, and the policy makers. So unless that contract is re-established through amicably, through dialogue, through tolerance, only then an normal Afghani life will become much better. And secondly, we must also remember that Afghanistan is not a country that has much to offer in trade. It is a state that has always been a recipient of aids through either through different neighbors or other countries.
But if it is a recipient of aid, Dr. Saba, why doesn't the West realize it, that it has been thriving on aid since the last few decades? All of a sudden, you just leave Afghanistan in a lurch without any possibility of striving economically. This is an outcome that I'm sure the West knew would be happening.
Exactly. This is what we call is a coercive diplomacy, because you are coercing, you are taking advantage of their economic weaknesses of a country, and even the rightful money that Afghan bank has, that is frozen in international accounts. And this is very, very criminal, because you are hurting a normal Afghani citizen whose pays are not released, the public servants or others, and it's not their fault. Their only fault is that they are living in the conditions that they have inherited.
But they are living in a conditions not since now, since decades. If you go and see Afghanistan now, and I'm sure you must have visited Afghanistan, and a lot of my colleagues who have visited Afghanistan say that the billions or the trillions of dollars that were supposedly injected into Afghanistan are not shown in any way whatsoever. There's no proper infrastructure in Afghanistan as we speak. There's no proper development that has happened in Afghanistan apart from small areas where development has occurred. Why is that so?
Afghanistan is a society that is highly become urbanized for few centers. Like I visited Kabul and others with the big plazas, shopping centers, university better, and the media center, but a highly securitized place. And the other important point is that, you know, in case of Afghanistan, there has always been a mismatch. So one side is developed, other is totally neglected. So what happens is that you have a very lopsided, and that is augmented by the fact that it is a highly has been in the past nepotism has flourished. So has the corruption, and you know the black money has flourished, and the no legal proper channels have been established, proper accountability mechanism really don't exist. So it is a selective rule of law that has existed in Afghanistan, likewise in many other countries of
Do
the
you
world.
feel that selective mechanism that you've talked about as far as governance of Afghanistan is concerned will continue under the Afghan Taliban rule? Or will there be some kind of a change?
You know, the reports that have been coming from Afghanistan through indigenous Afghanis, that it is not as bad in governance as it is said. You know, of course, there are few in Western media and even on Al Jazeera and others, it's flashed that, you know, the soldiers have, Talibs have attacked, removed the posters and things like that. But I think these are very, very minimum things. But normal Afghani, they are having, you know, the safety reassured. So it is not that elder, once the Afghan Taliban came, there were incidents of looting. But as it was digged more, it was by the criminal gangs on the street, not by the Talibs.
All right. Now let's also talk about the talks that happened in Oslo between the Afghan Taliban and, of course, the Western diplomats. Now they have linked aid to the improvement as far as the human rights situation in Afghanistan is concerned. Will the Afghan Taliban relent to the preconditions that have been put forward in Norway?
If you look at the place, that is the Norway has a very different variation of human rights character to it, and mostly it depends on the women, peace and security, and the girl education and rights to live and be free. So and interestingly, the very comes to my mind, if the Talibs have come to that place for the dialogue, it means that they are going to go forward. But the important point is that whenever after the civil war or the difficult phase, those who come to power, you have to be patient. And the international community and those who have left Afghanistan in lurch, they should be careful. There have been many analyses by Americans that why you are expecting so much from the Taliban of your ways of governance as compared to what the Afghanis really want. So it is, I think it is an overinflated demands. What they really need is that there should be inclusive government, there should be tolerance, there should be education going on for and health facilities for women and all, and it is going on. Yes, there are incidents of sporadic, but most important, what is left neglected is that why the Afghanis are selling their kidneys, are about to sell their kidneys, or even some cases children, for the cases of poverty. Isn't this a disrespect to humanity?
That is a huge disrespect to humanity. But what I'm trying to understand from you as well is that will there be a middle ground where the West and the Afghan Taliban could maybe coincide and move forward and find a solution to this current crisis that Afghanistan is embroiled in?
Well, but I'm very optimistic. So I really feel that Afghan Taliban, the regime, have learned an art of diplomacy through the various phases of negotiations before coming to power. And I feel that they have to and they will moderate. Of course, not to the Western expectations, but to they will come to a certain formula of settlement. Because if you read carefully in between the lines, they are very sensitive to what is happening to the economy of Afghanistan. And they're very worried. And the whole debate of asking the international community, the neighbors and other well-wishers are, you have to help us in this difficult time and we will settle everything. But then again in international relations, you don't go by the promises. So you look what is available on ground.
But Dr. Sabah, the repercussions could be grave as far as this humanitarian situation in Afghanistan is concerned. If it continues in the same manner that it is present currently, it is going to lead to increase in terrorism, it's going to lead to increase in drug trade and many other immigration to other countries, including Pakistan. Can the West, can the neighborly countries of Afghanistan afford this?
Obviously, I do agree with you, because obviously the very reason why Pakistan is so much active on having a peaceful diplomacy on Afghanistan is, you know, having the OIC special session here, talking to all external actors, engaging, you know, Russia and China and all others, is that it has to be, the US has left. and now it has become a regional problem, but they have forgotten that it's going to have major repercussions even to the outside, as you have said, specifically related to the terrorism. Where there's a hunger, where there's a vulnerability, they become a pockets of violence. And for Pakistan is going to be the major sufferer, because we do have our aggressive and the militant elements sitting in Afghanistan. And of course, then their recruitment from this side and other side, if they combine, they are again going to have a very, very negative influence on the internal stability of Pakistan.
What about the drug trade? What about the immigration that could again restart as far as the different neighboring countries such as Pakistan is concerned?
Immigration will continue. Pakistan is managing the border very well, but I think immigrants do have the human rights. You cannot,
of course,
if
I totally agree with you on
their home is burning as a neighbor by international standards and by humanity and by religion, you have to open your doors for them. And Pakistan has been doing that.
Of course.
But of course, we have mismanaged that as well, and we are bearing the cost of it. But this time, very successful and skillful efforts have been put forth. And secondly, regarding the narcotics is not only a border problem. It is more of a multilateral and international problem. So it has nodes all over. So it really requires an international efforts. Here again, Pakistan has always been on one of the leading countries that has said and cleared its country from narcotics. So,
all right, Dr. Sabha, also let's come back to the Oslo talks now. On the one hand, if you remember, well, it was Norway that invited the Afghan Taliban, and of course the Afghan Taliban were quite optimistic of these talks. Then there is also the quote that says that Norway says that these talks will not and do not represent a legitimization or recognition of the Taliban. Do you feel there is a kind of division as far as the point of view is concerned on recognizing or legitimizing the Taliban is concerned in the West?
I practically feel that that is the only stick that West can carry, and also of course the economic stick is always there, because they don't want to come militarily into this part of the world. What they can control the money, and that's what they are doing is through international lending agencies. And this not recognizing the Taliban regime is simply, but it is a roadblock for everybody. All the countries, including Pakistan and others, who don't want to be, clubbed with other side. So there has to be an international consensus on that. So it is a parallel thing that is going, and I think it is not unique to only here. History has proven that it has always happened. So there has to be a bargain, and I think the Pakistan and other countries who are closely monitoring Taliban regime is that somehow there has to be a middle ground from both sides. If both sides continue to stick to their stubborn positions,
then there will be no result, no outcome.
The people of Afghanistan will suffer.
Of course, and at the end of the day, it's always the people who suffer.
Yes.
Now, also you talked about a consensus. Now, consensus brings me to the United Nations and of course the statement of Antonio Guterres that Afghanistan is hanging by a thread, but at the same time, it has pledged a lot of money, billions of dollars, as far as aid to Afghanistan is concerned. Do you feel that the financial institutions that Antonio Guterres talks about that need to be given legal insurance so that they can work with the humanitarian operators is going to happen soon, or would it happen but a bit too late in the day?
I think it is already on ground, and it has already started, and many international humanitarian groups along with the UN groups are also going to be in Kabul soon. So because the Taliban government, they know they cannot deny their existence because they need them, and so does the other. So they are very careful in allowing them to come to the state. It's only that they are a bit careful regarding the criticism.
All right. And finally, when it comes to the different aid that has also been pledged apart from the United Nations, even by the United States, that have pledged $280 million, and they also pledged another amount before that. Pakistan has also pledged a lot of money, and of course it has been sending aid to Afghanistan as well. So have other countries been. Do you feel that till such time that a proper mechanism is evolved for regular deployment of money or transfer of money to Afghanistan, these small packages of aids that are coming to Afghanistan through different avenues and countries would suffice for Afghanistan? Can Afghanistan continue to move in a stable direction, in a stable manner, till such time that this money actually reaches Afghanistan?
This is a very slippery slope. Even the Pakistan has committed money. Even the humanitarian aid is going into Afghanistan, but that is again from the non-governmental sources or the charities. But the problem is that who is going to be accountable for whom? So it is basically working on the trust factor. And I think the West and others lenders shouldn't be questioning what's happening on ground, because once they are not allowing Afghan banks to work, how they can expect the accountability mechanism? If you are not recognizing the other party, how you can have a recognition or accountability be questioned from that side? So yes, they are sincere, the donors who are giving money to the humanitarian cause of Afghanis, but to think that there is going to be a foolproof accountability mechanism, I don't think so it's going to happen.
It cannot happen that early in the day. As you said, governance needs time, and it has been after more or less 2 decades that there is a proper government in Afghanistan that is left on its own, and there is not some backing of any other country behind it. So they need to be given certain amount of time, and of course this assurance from this current government that all the prerequisites that have been asked from them should be put into order, and some time lapse needs to be given to them so that they can do that. And if after that time lapse they do not or are not able to do that, then they could continue with such transactions. But till such time, they need to really take care and be extremely careful as far as the humanitarian and economic condition is concerned in Afghanistan. Thank you very much, Dr. Shabana Fayaz Saiba, to have come all the way to our studios and to have talked to us in detail about this latest situation concerning the aid to Afghanistan, the current situation, and of course the recognition of the Afghan Taliban government. Thank you very much, ma'am. Let's come to our second segment, ladies and gentlemen, and that second story concerns COVID-19, the pandemic, and of course the Omicron variant. What is happening in Pakistan, across the world? We are seeing a lot of cases. We are seeing a positivity ratio of more than 11%. More in the following report.
As Omicron is spreading at lightning speed round the globe, prompting experts caution against sounding the alarm, WHO official Maria Van Kerkhove has warned against buying these theories that virus will continue to mutate into milder strains, and notified against the next COVID variant to be more contagious and transmissible than Omicron, raising further alarm bells. WHO Director of Emergency Program Dr. Mike Ryan assured that the virus will continue to evolve before it settles into a pattern. The world stands at a crucial and critical juncture as the COVID-19 pandemic is now entering its third year. The World Health Organization head Dr. Tedros Adhanom has urged the countries to work together to bring the acute phase of the pandemic to an end. The CEO, Stephanie Bancel, of the US BioNTech company Moderna, has confirmed the clinical trials of a booster dose of the vaccine designed specifically to combat the Omicron variant of COVID-19. Pakistan is witnessing a gradual uptick in the coronavirus caseload as fifth wave of the coronavirus intensifies in Pakistan. 6 major cities of the country reported over 20% positivity rate. Data from the National Command and Operations Center, the NCOC, showed COVID-19 claimed 25 more lives in the country during the last 24 hours, making it the highest death toll in a single day, with positivity rates still over 10%. Considering the gravity of the situation, the federal government is scrambling to halt new COVID-19 variants by reimposing lockdown restrictions and travel curbs.
Dr. Sardar Shoaib Khan, Consultant General Medicine, joins us online. Dr. Saab, thank you very much to have joined us and, of course, to update us about what is happening as far as COVID-19 is concerned. First of all, let's talk about Pakistan before we go a bit generalizing and talking about the world. Pakistan has seen more than 20% positivity ratio in around 6 cities. Then the overall national positivity ratio is more than 11%. Do you attribute it to Omicron? Do you attribute it to other variants? Do you attribute it to the people not following the SOPs? What is the real cause behind it?
Assalamu alaikum to you, Omar, and your viewers. Thank you for having me on the program. I think I will attribute this positivity rate and the most recent surge to Omicron. If you look at the data from a couple of months ago, most of the positive patients were Delta variant, and if you look at it now, especially in the bigger cities, most of the positive cases that have been tested for genome have been Omicron, and this is following the pattern of the world. You can see all around the world that this Omicron has swept around the whole of Europe, Africa, America, Australia. You can see all these countries having surges and the new waves of COVID-19 infections. And as we all know, Omicron is much more transmissible. It transmits far more easier from one person to another, and this has meant that the R number has increased, and the cases have increased exponentially. And we've seen in Karachi, Lahore, Islamabad, and some of the other major cities that the positivity rate ratio has increased significantly in the last few weeks. But there is some positive in it. If you look at the data from the last 7 days, it seems like the constant increase in the cases not being seen now. So in the last 7 days, the cases have remained largely similar on average from day to day. So we might be heading towards the peak of this virus.
All right. The peak of the virus, as you've also talked about, is not only in Pakistan but also in a lot of countries across the world. Now, as we see more and more variants coming across, we've heard about the stealth variant, a sub-variant of Omicron as well, that is apparently supposed to be even more virulent than Omicron, because it somehow sometimes is detected, sometimes it is not detected, but it of course is transmissible even on a much quicker or a more vigorous level. Now, from the World Health Organization, an official, Maria Van Kerkhove, warns that the next COVID variant is going to be even more contagious and transmissible than Omicron. We've already seen this stealth variant. Are we going to see more variants in the months and the years to come before there seems to be some kind of thaw as far as this transmissibility is concerned?
Yes, you've rightly pointed out regarding the subvariants. We've seen this BA2 variant of Omicron, and this spreads even more quicker than the original Omicron, which was BA1. And we still don't know a lot about it, but at least in Denmark now the 65% of the cases are from this BA2 variant, and it's even spreads even faster than the Omicron. And if you look at the what the experts think around the world, there is this feeling that this virus will increase in transmissibility but decrease in its severity, which could be good, which means that we will all get it once in a while, just like another cold, and then brush it off. So if it is going that way, it is there are probably more positives in it than negatives, I would say.
All right, Dr. Saab, also, modernized, developing a new vaccine just for the Omicron variant. By the time the vaccine might come out, there might be another variant that will be even more contagious or virulent than Omicron. What should the world do? I mean, we've heard of herd immunity. We've heard of, as you said, that everybody is going to get it sooner or later with less aggressivity because of the different vaccines that we have taken. But what is going to be the future as far as this pandemic or this COVID-19 is concerned? Are we going to have more deaths? Are we going to have more people who are resistant to the future variants? What's going to happen? What's your take on that?
I think if you look at the UK data, I think UK is very good to look at, because they have very good reporting systems, and they have documented all their waves really well. If you look at their last wave from Delta variant, it spread really fast, and there was a lot of cases, and the daily death rate was in thousands. But now, if you look at the Omicron variant, the daily cases, they've broken all previous records in terms of daily cases. But if you look at the hospitalization data and the death data, this has come down significantly. So if you look at the news from UK, they've recently said that you no longer, it's no longer compulsory to wear face masks. So I think, Umar, we are going towards the last phase of this COVID-19 pandemic, when it turns from a pandemic to an endemic disease. An endemic disease is what is in the community at all times, and it circulates from within the community in manageable levels, and because it's not very severe, it doesn't really affect us that much. And
All right.
regarding vaccines, I've seen that news regarding the Moderna, but I think that ship has sailed. Already Omicron has spread around the world, and as you said, we've already going into the subvariant
Of course.
territory now. So as you said, by the time this Omicron vaccine will be available, booster vaccine will be available, we'll probably have another variant around the world. So there is one thing in thinking that maybe they need to have a vaccine that that gives protection against multiple different variants, or they try to predict the next variant and make a vaccine regarding that. So these are some of the things that people are thinking. But I personally think that in future we probably won't need vaccines.
All right. Now, Dr. Saab, that brings me to a very, very pertinent question. You talked about in the UK that it has been said that people can no longer afford, can afford now not to wear masks. But that is for those people who've gotten themselves their 2 vaccination doses plus the booster dose. Here in countries in Asia, where a lot of people are either against the vaccine or do not follow the SOPs properly, or C, do not follow the proper regimen of getting yourself vaccinated. What should be the procedure for these people in Asia, in South Asia, to follow as far as prevention from this pandemic is concerned?
Yes, I mean, I've said it before that the COVID-19 affects different communities, different countries differently, and every country has different dynamics. And we cannot take examples from different countries
Of course.
without considering our own community, our own ground realities. And that applies in this situation as well. What I would
The
say, Umar,
treatment
is
regimen
that
needs to be localized in your point of view. This is what you're trying
yes.
to say.
Yes, exactly. So, our NCOC has a brilliant record. We've seen how amazing their advice has always been. They've always been ahead of the curve in terms of, vaccination, in terms of restrictions, in terms of lockdowns. And we saw that, internationally, we were ranked quite highly in terms of, how well we've handled this crisis. So we should keep our confidence on our NCOC. We should keep our confidence on our experts that are sitting there, that have all the data coming in, and we should follow their advice. Now,
All right.
currently, the advice from them is that we should wear face masks as much as we can. We should go and get vaccinated. And maybe in time their advice will change, but until that time, we should follow what the NCOC says, and that will be the key to dealing with this Omicron surge in Pakistan, to make sure that we come out of this latest wave of COVID-19 unscathed, with our health in good shape and our economy in good shape, inshallah.
That is so true, and the way Pakistan has dealt with the COVID-19 pandemic is quite exemplary. Even the World Health Organization has praised Pakistan for the way that it has handled the COVID-19. Now, France has done a study, Dr. Saab, in which it says that there is no longer the need to get a 4th COVID jab, a booster dose, and we'll have to wait and see as far as how this pandemic develops in the next coming months. Here we've had, those at least who are cognizant of what this pandemic represents have had their booster shots as well. So does it mean, in your point of view, that these vaccinations are going to end at the 3rd dose, and then maybe later, just like the flu, we are going to have a yearly vaccination for the future variants of COVID-19?
Yes. I mean, it again depends on each country. So, for
All right.
example, there are some countries in the world that were so ahead in terms of vaccination that, they're even the people with the 3rd booster, they were, going 6, 7 months, you know, after that 3rd booster. So maybe for those countries, they did the 4th booster, without doing studies on it. In terms of France, obviously the study was done in France for French people, and it is applicable for French people. And as happens in science, you cannot apply and generalize results from one country or one
Agreed.
community to
Agreed.
everywhere else. But it certainly has some, it tells us that how long are you going to keep vaccinating yourself. And just like you said, maybe yearly vaccination for the most vulnerable people, those who are at high risk, those are who have of a higher age bracket, those who have diabetes, obesity, all of these risk factors that we know increase your risk of having severe COVID. maybe those people will need once a year vaccination, once a year booster, and for the rest of the population, it will become a really mild disease that does not need vaccination. But time will tell.
All right. Only time will tell. Dr. Sardar, Shoaib Khan Sahab, thank you very much to have joined us, to have talked to us about the latest as far as COVID-19 is concerned. The cases in Pakistan, as you will also know, are increasing with every passing day. The number has slightly decreased over the last few days. Nevertheless, the positivity ratio is and remains quite high. We need to be extremely cognizant and follow the SOPs, unlike other countries where the people are already properly vaccinated. And of course, the COVID-19 is not spreading as much as it is now in Pakistan. Let's come now to our last two stories, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, in India, where mobs burnt train coaches in protests about jobs in railways. There is a huge unemployment ratio in India, contrary to what India claims, and especially in East India, there is a huge crisis as far as the employment opportunities are concerned, and there is a preference as far as these employment opportunities are also concerned. So that is why a lot of the youth are extremely disappointed, are extremely frustrated, and this is what leads to that frustration. As you can see in the parallel windows, they are torching the trains because they say, I mean, this is just one of the avenues, and that is the railways, where the youth say those who want the jobs and those who have all the prerequisites to get the jobs, they say that they are not being given the jobs. In fact, other people are being given the preferences over that. Millions of people had applied for this 150,000 jobs in Bihar and neighboring Uttar Pradesh, but the recruitment process, as has been said by a lot of people, has not been transparent, and of course the frustration shows. And finally, ladies and gentlemen, let's come to our last story, and that concerns the 5G spectrum, and of course the presence in the future of this technology in Pakistan. The government has formed a high-powered committee to approve this 5G strategic plan and oversee the process of releasing the next generation technology as far as the spectrum auction is also concerned. The committee is going to propose incentives, the release of 5G spectrum, which will be included in the finance bill 2022. And what the Ministry of Information Technology and Telecommunication plans to do is to roll out the 5G technology in the year 2023. The PTA is going to hold this spectrum auction as far as how and which companies are going to take this over in the next couple of years. But there are a lot of speculations and questions as well, because a lot of people say that even the 4G spectrum that is currently present in Pakistan is not properly dissipated all across the country. There are a lot of issues. So will the 5G survive? Will this 5G be enough, or will the 5G be able to be better than the current state of 4G? A lot of question marks remain. Nevertheless, 5G is the future of technology and telecommunication, and as the world has embraced it, so will Pakistan in the year 2023, inshallah. With that, we come to an end of today's news, and we'll see you inshallah tomorrow with news stories and segments that concern you, us, and Pakistan. Stay tuned, stay safe. Allah Hafiz.